Hello, welcome to another video on our channel. Here, we translate testimonies from people who have had near-death experiences and other spiritual experiences. Today, let's learn the story of Evelyn Harper. She says that she died, saw her whole life pass in seconds, and met her late father. If you are not yet subscribed to the channel, subscribe now. Leave a comment with your name and city. Let's now hear Evelyn's testimony. Hey guys, my name is Evelyn Harper, and I have a story to tell that will move you. You know when we think we understand everything about life? Well, I thought that too. But then fate decided to give me some lessons and, man, they were ones that we never forget. I was born and raised in Seattle, that rainy city that everyone knows from the movies. My life was pretty normal, you know? School, friends, family, nothing extraordinary. Until, at the age of 17, I had my first encounter with what I call the other side. It was in a car accident. After that, things were never the same. I decided to become a nurse. Maybe because that accident awakened in me a desire to help people, to be there in difficult times. And look, it was as a nurse that I had my second experience with the inexplicable. I resuscitated a patient who was practically dead, but it was not just that. What happened next? Well, I'll tell you later. The year 2008 was a watershed in my life. I lost my father to cancer. The financial crisis hit my family hard, and I died, or almost so. It was that year that I had my most intense near-death experience, the one that changed everything I thought I knew about life, death, and what comes after. Today, I tell my story not to shock anyone or to make myself special. I tell you because I believe it can help other people. You know, we live in a world that is so skeptical, so disbelieving. Sometimes, a little mystery, a little spirituality, can be what we need to give meaning to our existence. So if you're there, listening to my story, know that what I'm about to tell you is real. It is my experience, my truth. You may not believe everything, and that's okay. I only ask that you listen with an open heart. Who knows? Maybe this might change the way you see the world a little bit. Let's go back in time a little. I was 17 years old. My whole life ahead of me, you know. It was a typical Seattle day. Rain, gray skies, that melancholy in the air. I was in the car with my father. We had gone to do some shopping in the city center. We were stopped at a traffic light, talking about nonsense, laughing. My father was always my best friend, you know. We got along really well. Suddenly, everything happened very quickly. A deafening noise, the world spinning, glass shattering. A car had hit us from behind at high speed. At that moment, it was as if someone had pressed the off button on my body. Everything became dark, silent. And then, man, it's hard to explain. It was like I was floating above the car. I could see everything down there. The crushed car, my father screaming, trying to reach me in the passenger seat. But the strangest thing, I could see my own body, motionless, lying among the wreckage. It was like watching a movie, you know? I didn't feel pain. I didn't feel scared. It was a feeling of peace, a calm I had never experienced before. I tried to shout to my father, to say that everything was okay, that I was there, but he couldn't hear me. Nobody could. I was just a floating consciousness. I don't know how long I stayed like that. It could have been seconds, minutes, or hours. Time seemed to not exist in that state. I just know that suddenly I felt like something was pulling me back. It was like diving into a cold pool. The shock, the pain, it all came back at once. I woke up in the hospital days later. The doctors said I was lucky, that I almost didn't die. But I knew something more had happened. Something that science could not explain. I didn't tell anyone about what I saw. Who would believe it? A teenager saying she floated out of her own body. I thought it best to keep that with me. But that experience changed something inside me. It was like a door had been opened, you know, a door to a world I didn't even know existed. After that accident, my life took a different direction. I've always been a bit of an indecisive person, you know? Those who don't really know what they want to do with their lives. But after spending time at the hospital, seeing how hard the nurses and doctors work to save lives, something clicked inside me. I decided I wanted to be a nurse. It wasn't easy, you know? The studies were demanding. The nights on duty during the internship were exhausting. But I felt like I had found my place in the world. I graduated and started working in the ICU of a hospital in Seattle. Man, working in an ICU is a roller coaster of emotions. One day you're celebrating because a patient got better. The next you're fighting to save someone who's slipping through your fingers. It was on one of those busy nights that something happened that reminded me of that accident experience. Everyone was running, you know? A patient had gone into cardiac arrest. We were doing everything, but nothing worked. The doctor was ready to declare death. But then, I felt something. I do not know how to explain. It was as if a voice inside me was screaming not to give up. I insisted that we continue resuscitation. The doctor thought I was crazy, but he gave in. And do you know what happened? The guy came back. It was like a miracle. Days later, when the patient was better, he called me into the room. I thought it was just to say thank you, you know? But what he told me, man, it gave me goosebumps from head to toe. He said he saw everything from above. He saw us trying to resuscitate him. He saw me insisting not to stop. At that moment, everything came back. The memory of my own accident. The feeling of floating outside my body. It was as if the universe had given me confirmation, you know, that what I had experienced was real. From then on, I started to become more interested in these experiences. I started reading about people who went through similar things. And you know what? The more I read, the more I realized that there was a world beyond the one we see every day, a world that science still cannot completely explain. My work as a nurse took on a new meaning. It wasn't just about caring for patients' bodies, but also their souls. To be there not only in moments of physical pain, but also in moments of spiritual transformation. 2008 was one of those years, you know, the ones we preferred to cross off the calendar. It started with the financial crisis. My God, what chaos. We saw the news every day. People losing their homes, their jobs. My family was not immune. My husband, James, lost his job. We had to tighten our belts, juggle the bills. But the worst was yet to come. My father, that incredible guy who was always my safe haven, was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. It was like the ground disappeared beneath my feet, you know? We always think that our parents are indestructible, that they will always be there. And suddenly, the following months were a roller coaster. Chemotherapy, radiotherapy, surgeries. I divided my time between the hospital where I worked and the hospital where my father was hospitalized. Sometimes I didn't even know where I was anymore. Seeing my father, my hero, waste away day after day. Man, there are no words to describe it. He, who had always been so strong, so full of life, now could barely get out of bed. But do you know what impressed me most? Even in the worst moments, and he smiled. He said everything was fine, that's just how life is. In October, he was gone. It was like a part of me went with it, you know? I felt empty, lost. The world kept spinning. People came and went, but I was stuck in time. December arrived, and with it, the first Christmas without my father. I went to visit his grave. I sat there, talking to him as if he could hear me. I talked about how difficult it was, how I missed him. It was there, in that cold Seattle cemetery, that everything fell apart. I felt pain in my chest, shortness of breath. I thought it was just the weight of emotion, you know, but it was more than that, a lot more. James, my husband, realized something was wrong. He started screaming for help, doing CPR on me. I could hear his voice, distant, as if it came from another world, and then silence. A deep silence, like I had never experienced before. It was at that moment, there on the cold ground of that cemetery, that my true spiritual journey began. A journey that would forever change my understanding of life, death, and everything in between. What happened next is difficult to explain in words. It's like trying to describe colors to someone who's never seen, you know. But I will try. Suddenly, I was no longer in the cemetery. It was nowhere that I could recognize. It was an empty space. There was no ground. There was no sky. Just darkness. But it wasn't scary darkness, it was welcoming. I no longer had a body. It was just consciousness. Pure consciousness floating in this infinite space. I didn't feel cold. I didn't feel hot. I didn't feel afraid. It was a peace so profound that it was overwhelming. Little by little, I began to notice a soft light around me. It was as if space itself was alive, pulsing. And then, the other lights appeared. They were like little interconnected stars. Each of them, I knew, was a soul. I could feel these souls. Not with the physical senses, of course, since I no longer had a body. It was a different perception. I could feel their stories, their joys, their pains. It was as if each one of them was an open book, and I could read all the pages at once. Among these souls, it was as if the entire universe opened up before me. I saw scenes from my life flashing by, but it wasn't just the big moments, you know. They were little things. A smile I gave to a stranger on the street, a word of comfort for a scared patient, things I didn't even remember doing. And the most impressive, I could feel the impact each of these actions had. How that smile changed someone's day. How that word of comfort gave someone strength to keep fighting. I felt a presence. He wasn't God, at least not in the sense we usually think. It was an energy, pure love. There was no trial, just understanding. It was as if this presence embraced me and said, "It's okay. You're doing the best you can." At that moment, I understood. I understood that every small act of kindness, every gesture of love, matters. But it wasn't a normal movie. It was interactive. I saw scenes from my childhood. I was playing in the backyard. My father was teaching me how to ride a bike. But it wasn't just about seeing. I could feel everything again. The grass beneath my feet, the wind in my face, the fear of falling off my bike. The most impressive, I could feel what others were feeling. I saw the pride in my father's eyes when I was able to cycle alone for the first time. I felt love overflowing from his heart. The scenes went by. Happy moments, sad moments, my first kiss, my graduation, my wedding day. But it wasn't just the big events. I saw moments that I didn't even remember anymore. One day in high school, I smiled at a girl who looked like she was having a bad day. At the time, I didn't care. But now, in this review, I could see how that simple smile changed her day. How that small act of kindness stopped her from doing something terrible. I also saw the times I was selfish, when I hurt someone, but there was no trial. It was as if the universe was showing me, "Look, this happened. What did you learn from it?" One scene in particular stuck with me. It was an ordinary day at the hospital. I was tired, in a bad mood. An elderly patient called me. She just wanted to talk a little. She was feeling alone. At the time, I was a little dry. I said I was busy. But now, in this review, I could feel her sadness, her loneliness. And I deeply regretted not taking 5 minutes to sit down and talk. But you know what's crazier? I also saw the impact of the good things I did without even realizing it. One day, I held the hand of a patient who was dying. There was no one from his family around. At the time, I thought it hadn't made much of a difference. But now, I could feel the comfort that that simple gesture brought him in his last moments. It was as if every action, every word, every thought had created a ripple that spread across the universe. Some waves were small, others huge, but they all mattered. In this review, there was no right or wrong, good or bad. It was all experience, apprenticeship, growth. I understood that life is not about being perfect. It's about learning, evolving, becoming a better version of yourself every day. And you know what's most incredible? I realized that we are not alone on this journey. Every person who passes through our lives, even for a brief moment, has a role. We are all teachers and students of each other. When the review was finished, I felt light, as if I had left behind a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. I understood that I didn't need to be perfect, that the important thing was to move forward, always trying to be a little better. It was a transformative experience. It made me see life in a completely new way. And he gave me a mission to live each day with more awareness, more compassion, because now I knew every small act of love can create ripples that change the world. After reviewing my own life, something even more incredible happened. Suddenly, I wasn't just seeing my story anymore. It was as if I had access to the experiences of other souls. I saw a woman in India, struggling with poverty, but still finding joy in the little things. I felt your strength, your resilience. I saw a man in Japan stuck in an exhausting work routine, yearning for a deeper connection with life. I felt your loneliness, your desire for change. Each soul had its own story, its own struggles and triumphs, and I could feel everything. The pain, the joy, the fear, the hope. It was overwhelming and at the same time, beautiful. I saw children being born and elderly people leaving. I saw loves meeting and separating. I saw moments of pure happiness and profound sadness. It was as if the entire human experience was passing through me. And you know what's craziest? I realized that, deep down, we are all the same. It doesn't matter the color of your skin, your nationality, your religion. On a soul level, we all want the same thing: to love and be loved, to find purpose, to leave our mark on the world. One message became clear to me. Although our bodies and minds may be injured, our souls remain intact. It's as if the soul were a pure diamond, and our life experiences polished this diamond, making it even brighter. I saw souls who had gone through unimaginable suffering on earth, but who here, on this spiritual plane, were at peace. I understood that each experience, no matter how difficult it is, has a purpose. It is an opportunity for growth, for evolution. I also realized how interconnected we are all. An action by a person in Australia can affect someone in Brazil, even if they never meet physically. It's as if we were all part of a great cosmic web. This experience made me understand the importance of empathy, of unconditional love, because now I knew every person we meet is fighting their own battle, carrying their own story, and all of us, deep down, are souls seeking to evolve, learn, grow. When this part of the experience ended, I felt transformed. It was as if my heart had expanded to embrace all of humanity, and I knew that if I went back, I would never again be able to judge someone without trying to understand their story first. While I was still trying to process everything I had seen and felt, something incredible happened. Suddenly, I was no longer alone in that space. I felt a familiar presence, an energy I would recognize anywhere. It was my father. It wasn't like seeing him with physical eyes, you know. It was more like feeling him. And man, the peace that emanated from him was indescribable. That man I saw fight cancer, who I saw suffer so much, was now completely at peace. Serene. We didn't talk with words. It was more like exchanging thoughts, feelings. He told me, or rather made me feel, that he was proud of me, who had followed my journey, my struggles, that he understood my pain over his loss, but that I didn't need to suffer, that death is just a passage, and that love never dies. He showed me that he had been with me the whole time, even after he left. In those moments when I felt an inexplicable comfort, it was him. When I dreamed about him, it wasn't just a dream, it was him visiting me. But it wasn't just my father I found. I saw other souls that I knew. My grandmother, who had left when I was a childhood friend who died in a car accident, even some patients I had missed in the hospital. Each of them had a message for me. My grandmother reminded me of the importance of family, of keeping traditions alive. My childhood friend talked about living life to the fullest, because we never know when our time will run out. The patients, they thanked me for being there in their final moments, for doing everything I could to comfort them. And then, something even more surreal happened. A light, brighter than all the others, approached. It wasn't a person, it was more like a being of pure energy. An angel, perhaps. I don't really know how to describe it. This being showed me visions of the future. It wasn't specific things, like who's going to win the next election or anything like that. They were more trends. I saw humanity going through great challenges, but I also saw hope. I saw people coming together, overcoming differences. I saw incredible technological advances, but also a return to nature, a reconnection with the earth. The message was clear. The future is not written. It depends on us, our choices, our actions. Every small act of love, every decision to do good counts. When this dialogue ended, I felt complete, as if all the pieces of the puzzle of life had fallen into place. I understood that death is not the end, that our loved ones are always with us, and that we have an important role to play in the grand scheme of the universe. After all these incredible experiences, I started to feel a kind of tug. It was like something was calling me back. At first, I resisted. After experiencing all that peace, all that unconditional love, who would want to go back, right? But then I remembered everything I had learned, that each life has a purpose, that each experience is an opportunity for growth. And I understood that my mission on Earth had not yet ended. The feedback was intense. It was like diving headfirst into an ice-cold pool. Suddenly, all physical senses returned at once. The pain in the chest, the cold of the cemetery floor, the sound of the ambulance sirens. I opened my eyes and the first thing I saw was the face of James, my husband. He was crying, holding my hand. Paramedics were around, working frantically. I wanted to say that everything was fine, that I had seen incredible things, but I couldn't speak. The following days in the hospital were difficult. My body had been through trauma, and recovery was slow. Others clearly thought it was delirium caused by a lack of oxygen to the brain. But I knew the truth. I knew that what I had experienced was real. Readapting to normal life was a challenge. How do you get back into your routine after experiencing the cosmos? How do you worry about paying bills after you have felt the unconditional love of the universe? But little by little, I found a balance. I started to see my everyday life with different eyes. Every moment became precious. Every interaction with another person is an opportunity to spread love. I returned to work at the hospital with a new perspective. Now, I wasn't just taking care of patients' bodies. I was caring for their souls, listening to their stories, offering not only physical, but spiritual comfort. Of course, not everything was rosy. I had moments of doubt, of fear. Sometimes the experience seemed so distant that I questioned whether it had actually happened. But then I remembered the peace I felt, the love I experienced, and I knew it was real. The near-death experience completely changed my worldview. It made me understand that we are much more than our physical bodies, that life is precious, but that death is not the end, and that each of us has the power to make a difference, to spread light in this world. It's been a few years since my near-death experience, and I can say that every day is a new discovery. You know, when we think we understand everything, and then life comes and shows us that we don't know anything? Well, that's more or less how I feel. I decided to share my story, not because I think I'm special or enlightened, far from it. I share because I believe it can help other people, whether it's someone who's been through a similar experience and thinks they're going crazy, or someone who's struggling to find meaning in life. One of the things that impacted me the most was understanding how we are all connected. It's not the end, it's just a change of state. Of course, I still miss the people who left. I still cry when I remember my father. But now I know he's okay. That our love continues beyond this life. My work as a nurse took on a new meaning. Each patient I see is a soul on a journey. Sometimes all they need is someone to hold their hand, to listen to their story. And I try to be that person. Of course, not everyone believes my story. I've been called crazy, a liar, and that's okay. I'm not here to convince anyone. I only share my truth, my experience. If there's one message I'd like people to take away from my story, it's love is real. It is the most powerful force in the universe. And each of us has the capacity to love, to make a difference. Life is a precious gift. Every day is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to love. Don't waste it worrying about things that ultimately don't matter. And if you're going through a difficult time, remember, this too shall pass. You are stronger than you imagine. You are an eternal soul on a learning journey. Anyway, this is my story. A story of death, of life, of love. A story that continues to unfold every day. And you know what? I can't wait to see what comes next. Because now I know, life, in all its forms, is a constant miracle. And I'm here to live it to its fullest.